GETHSEMANE Gospel Global Broadcast. I'm your host, Pastor Tim Sykes. I'm excited to be back in the studio today, and we have as a very special guest, Mr. Leon Fat Cat Phillips. He is the president of the Galveston Coalition for Justice. He is a well-known community activist and BOI, am I right?
Correct.
Graduate of what class?
66.
Class of 1966 Central High School Bearcats.
Right.
My mother, I think my mother came out maybe with Pat Talbot's class, Sister Pat Talbot,
69,
67 or 68, something like that.
Yeah.
But my mother was George Foreman, Alfred Foreman, they call him Doug.
Yeah.
So, well, welcome, Brother Phillips. Brother Phillips has been on the battlefield for quite some time, more than 50 years.
No, just since I've been, since I got off the road as a salesman with the Johnson Publishing Company.
Which was the producers of Jet and Ebony magazine, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I got off the road with them in 1978.
Okay, in 1978.
So, let me correct you. You said I'm an activist.
Right.
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm an actionist.
An actionist.
Right.
I like that.
I take action if there's a problem.
Uh-huh.
I take action at the problem.
Okay. Okay.
You know, I mean,
right. So a community actionist.
Correct.
And not an activist.
Correct.
Okay. All right. That's good. That's really good.
Well, I mean, in being a salesman with the Johnson Publishing Company, it's a totally positive environment. As an 18-year-old kid going to work for them and working for them for 9 years, I was taught that if you can identify the problem, it's no longer the problem. Everything else is dealing with the solution.
So if you identify it, it's no longer a problem once you identify it. Then the mark is you start gearing and working toward the solution of that you identify.
You don't have to invest any more time in trying to find the problem.
Okay.
You've identified it. Now
Right.
you can take 100% of your time and go at correcting the problem.
Gotcha. So let me ask you this. Working for Johnson Publishing Company, so were you there when the founder, John H. Johnson, when he was active and there running the company?
You have to understand, I'm a BOI.
Okay.
I left Galveston when I was 18, going to work for them.
At 18?
At 18.
So you left Galveston going to Chicago?
As soon as I graduated, I went to Prairie View.
Okay.
Didn't like college, came back home. A friend of mine called and said it was a lady at the Genie Hotel hiring for the Johnson Publishing Company.
Okay.
I took off and went down there.
All right.
There she was. Next thing I know, I was on a plane headed for Chicago.
Okay.
And in leaving Galveston, I had on a seersucker suit.
A seersucker suit.
Got to Chicago and it was a foot of snow on the ground.
Oh, wow.
No top coat, no nothing.
So let me ask you, so you didn't know that much about Chicago or research or anything to know that it was that kind of inclement weather?
Man, I was 18 years old. I had an opportunity to get out of Dallas.
Right. And you took advantage
And
of it.
I took it.
Great.
And I went up there and within 2 weeks, I decided this isn't for me because it's too cold.
Right.
I'm from Galveston, man, palm trees, beaches.
Right.
You know, I'm not used to snow, and
So after 2 weeks of being there in Chicago,
I came back home.
working for Johnson Publishers, you came back home.
I came back home.
Now, did you keep the job and transfer like sales?
No, I quit.
You quit.
They put me, instead of flying me back home, they put me on a Greyhound bus.
A Greyhound bus.
And I came back home. And the friend that had called me and told me that they were hiring came home to get married.
Okay.
And our whole conversation was about him being with the company. And he convinced me to get on a plane. He called back to our main supervisor. This guy named Don Scott.
Okay.
He called back to him, and Scott said, put him on the plane, but you bring him back. And I went back. And you know, when the good Lord's at work, ain't nothing you can do.
Right. But yield and submit to his will.
And what I've learned through these years is just get out the way.
Right.
Let him go ahead on and do what he do.
Amen.
And all you're supposed to do is follow his direction.
Right.
You know,
Right. So you returned home to Galveston.
Returned home.
And you were still 18 years old.
Just turned 19.
Okay. And so what was your journey then when you returned home to Galveston, 19 years old, experienced in Chicago for 2 weeks, seeing that part of the country, totally different, of course, than coming back. What did you engage when you come back home?
I was 19 then.
Okay.
I was back home for 9 months.
9 months.
I went to jail 6 times.
While you were home.
While I was
in that 9 month time period.
In that 9 month time.
You went to jail 6 times.
6 times.
So what landed you in jail 6 times during that 9 month time period being back here in Galveston?
Everything you think of.
Like
Drunk.
Intoxication and drunk.
Fighting with the police.
Fighting with the police. And
just everything you could think of, I got into it. My father had always told me, you can go to jail for anything but stealing. Every time I went to jail, he'd come and get me out.
Okay.
Now, I was real close with Floyd Phillips,
okay,
who was Selena with the Blue Room's grandson.
Her grandson.
Right.
Okay.
So, and my father was real good friends. My father and mother were real good friends with the family because all of us were Phillips.
Right, but y'all wasn't related.
We wasn't related.
Okay.
And his sister was in my class. And my father would pick up the telephone and call Selena, look, he locked up here. And she would call her. You know, you have to understand, this is 1967.
Okay.
68, going into 68.
Right.
And different time.
Right.
You know.
I was about 2 years old.
See,
cause I'll be 57 tomorrow. Is my birthday.
Oh Lord.
Yeah. So I'll be 57.
Bless you, my brother. I'm telling you.
So wow. So this was kind of during that civil rights era.
Exactly.
Marking the kind of like right after Dr. King was, because Dr. King had been already assassinated.
No, just before he got assassinated.
He got assassinated in 1968. Right. Okay. So right before.
I went back to the Johnson Publishing Company, and about a month or so after getting back, he was assassinated.
Okay.
And
quite certainly they ran a big story on it in their Jet and Ebony magazine, I'm sure.
I learned how I had nothing to do with the putting together the magazine.
You were in sales, huh?
You know how people come and knock on your door and have a story?
Yes.
That was me. I was a door-to-door salesman.
So you went knocking on doors to sell
magazine.
Jet and Ebony?
We had 68 different magazines. Ebony, Jet, and Tan were our main magazines.
Tan?
Yeah, that was another Johnson Publishing Company magazine.
See, wow, that's new to me. I never heard of Tan.
Oh, man.
Well, I mean, not, God, that I can remember Tan. So what was Tan all about?
Black.
Okay.
Us.
Okay.
All three of those magazines were magazines that consisted of the Black history in the United States.
Wow.
Because the Johnson Publishing Company was nationwide.
Right. Now, I tell you, I was featured in Jet magazine when I got married to my ex-wife who lives in Tennessee. We were featured in that society world. You know how they feature couples when they get married?
Yeah.
So and then that same a few years later, a few years earlier, I was featured in Ebony magazine as one of the 30 young leaders, 30 and under. They did a 30 and under, 30 young leaders, 30 and under. And I was featured in Ebony magazine in that particular article. As a matter of fact, it was the year the movie came out with Oprah Winfrey and Danny Glover.
Okay.
And so Oprah Winfrey, Danny Glover was on the cover of that particular Ebony magazine, and I was featured in that article called 30 Young Leaders, 30 and Under, where they take and they choose young people 30 years old and under all over the country that that are doing things in the community. At the time, I was a Galveston police officer. I was associate pastor at Mount Moriah, and I was on the board of commissioners for the housing authority.
So what did it blow up? Did it blow up your head or on your chest?
Well, it gave you a source and sense of inspiration.
Right.
But for me, it was exposure. But at the same time, I learned that when you do great things,
You didn't know it was great then.
I didn't.
Right.
I just thought that it was because my dad taught me that this was what you're supposed to do.
Right.
My dad, Honey Bear, they called him Honey Bear, Joseph Sykes, was an actionist that when years and years, I can remember I was a little boy and he was fighting for the same kind of rights, public housing issues that had been ongoing in Galveston during that time period.
Yeah.
So let's jump on that. Galveston Housing Authority, of course, had an established protocol that they wanted to tear down the Walter Norris Community Building. And they put that out there, and you were one of the spokespersons that showed up at the meeting and spoke on that along with Tars Woods. I remember speaking on it. So where is that right now? Has that been tabled and?
They voted to table it.
But it's not over.
No. The powers that be just set it on the back burner for right now.
And let it
It's
simmer.
sitting there simmering.
So let me ask you that. Let me ask you this while we are engaging that. Because I've seen it happen so often here in Galveston where groups and organizations take things and they table it, kind of wait for the actionists and the activists and the people speaking out against it to kind of simmer down, and then they'll bring it back up 6, 7 months, 8 months later and present it for a proposal, retire in an executive session, say, hit the gavel, hey, it's done. Do you think that they kind of build a smoke screen to do that, to try to get it back on the table at a later date and to pass it.
With the coalition, we have decided to mount something to keep it in people's minds. I have an article that I just finished that I'm going to send to the Galveston Daily News. So every week or two, people from the organization and around the city are going to send articles in. You have to understand that when something is motivated and pushed as strongly as this has been pushed, you have to wonder who's pushing it.
So you're saying like different organizations, lobbyists, and groups that are behind it, and their reason for being behind it, and their involvement and investment.
Yes, and if they're sitting back there and they're waiting on it to cool down,
Right.
that's the purpose for writing the article.
Okay.
You know, I mean, as long as there are embers in the fire,
Right.
eventually you can get a flame going again.
Right.
So they're looking to spark that flame again, and we're steadily pouring a little bit of water on it at the same time,
Right.
so that the embers don't get hot enough to be able to create a flame.
Right. So historically in Galveston, because I've seen it often, just like they had a situation with the school board superintendent. So, and I'm not saying that the guy's not.
I know nothing.
Nice.
I know nothing about him.
And
I do know how to read.
Right.
And in reading, I read what the process was.
Right.
And they went completely against the process.
And that's the whole principle of that matter.
Listen, I learned this. I'm 3/4 of a century old.
Okay.
I've got experience on my side.
Right.
That experience has taught me, and also being at the Johnson Publishing Company, taught me how to take a negative and find a positive in it.
Okay.
Because there's a lesson in no matter what it is, whether it's a negative or a positive, there's a lesson to be learned.
Right.
As long as the rules stay the same,
Right.
I know how to play the game.
Okay.
But when the rules change and you're not willing to speak up and say, okay, wait, that's not in the playbook.
Right.
Where'd that come from?
Right.
And they begin to give you, we have the authority to do it. Doesn't mean it's right.
Of course. And here's the sad thing, Brother Phillips, is that whole process, of course, we know that they're breaking.
Here, let me give you this.
Okay.
They had 3 meetings about rebuilding, tearing down the Walton Norris building, and building housing on that property.
Okay.
The first 2 meetings, you had influential African Americans who spoke. That 3rd meeting is the meeting where I spoke, and other influential African Americans spoke. Well, whoever was fanning the fire for that, wouldn't that give you the message that a large portion of Galveston's population is not for this?
Correct. Right.
So you can't force feed things into people when you have the type of force that are making it regurgitate.
Okay.
And this is what has happened with that.
And then you go, and then you have this superintendent situation where they go against the protocol. They establish written rule of protocol, right?
There's written rules
that's mandated by the state.
But there are clauses in there,
right?
That yes, it gives the board a chance to put out informed information and their opinion of that information that they're putting out. But at the same time, the question remains, who has the most authority? The state and the set of rules that they set out, or that one clause in the rules that the board has to follow?
Right. And so let me ask you this, because being at that school board meeting this last week, which I spoke at, and you spoke there, it was said that there was a clause that said that they could do it if they filed a petition for a waiver.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Which they stated they did do that. And then a portion of concern came up about the process of him being certified and credentialed in certain areas. And it was stated that, yes, he took the certification process and the exam, but he has not received his credentials, his certification yet. So historically, what I've seen, and it's happened way too often in this city, where the powers to be go against the grain of their own rules or regulation. But what I've also seen was if you or me or another person of color violate a similar rule or regulation, then they'll be quick to terminate us and get rid of us, but it seems like it's okay for them to change the rules in the middle of the game so they can win the game.
There's nothing secretive about what they're doing.
Right.
You have to understand, for 4 years, you had the leadership of this country that opened the door for them to be able to do what they're doing with no repercussions.
Right.
Look, the United States of America is set up on one man, one vote.
Okay.
On that board, there are, 5 board members?
Right. And
one superintendent.
That's he's
A
actually
non-voting
right.
superintendent.
Right.
There are 7 board members.
Right. For it's an odd number.
Right.
And then a superintendent.
But the thing about it is, we as a people, and there's a lot to this, and we're dealing with a short time limit.
Right.
But let me give it to you this way. In 2008, September, Ike hit Galveston. Let's go further back. In 1999,
okay,
a lady by the name of Sharon Strain was the director of the Galveston Housing Authority.
I was on the board when we brought her to Galveston.
She acquired a Hope 6 grant.
I remember that.
That Hope 6 grant gave her the power to be able to tear down 168 units of public housing
Right.
and rebuild 38 single-family houses.
I remember that as well.
With the guise that out of the 168 public housing units, they would get first choice at those 38 single-family houses. That wasn't my problem.
Okay.
My problem was all of that 168 units was in District 1,
All of them.
a predominantly African-American district for Galveston City Council.
Right.
If you got one vote out of all 168 units, you had 168 votes. If you got two votes out of the 38 single-family houses that they built,
Okay.
you only had 76 votes.
Okay.
What is that? That's the depletion
Right.
of the voting power.
Right.
Well, here comes Ike. There was a great big hollering about don't rebuild public housing in Galveston. It even got to the place where they were saying that Galveston was a racist town.
Okay.
And that was true and untrue.
Well, you say true and untrue and untrue. So part of it was a true statement, and then the portion of it was not.
You have to understand the roots of the individuals that were doing the hollering
Right.
hadn't been in Galveston but about 15, maybe 20 years.
Okay.
So everything that they knew about public housing in Galveston was negative.
Right. So let me say in closing, because we're going to wrap up and we're going to bring you back, Mr. Leon, because we need to finish this conversation, because that's very true. What I see now happening in Galveston, the regentrification of a lot of these neighborhoods where they're taking that used to be predominantly African-American neighborhoods, and I'm kind of rushing to say this, ladies and gentlemen, because you need to notice that it's 2-minute warning. Galveston has undergone regentrification where they're taking used to be predominantly African-American neighborhoods, they regentrifying them, and they're bringing in, they're wanting to make it mixed family units and things like that. We're going to come back and talk about this at a later date, because this is huge. And I want the community to understand and know, especially the African-American community that remain here on Galveston Island. Ladies and gentlemen, you need to get involved, you need to be aware, and you need to stay abreast of the things that's happening. If you are not attending these meetings, if you're not involved, if you're not being an actionist, I encourage you to do so. Get in touch with Mr. Leon Phillips with the Galveston Coalition for Justice. Also, we are forming GUPAC, Galveston United Political Action Committee. You'll hear more about that forthcoming. We're going to be doing some things here in the city. We're not going to let up. We're not going to shut up. We're not going to sit down. We're not going to go away. We are going to be present at all of these meetings. We're going to be outspoken and we're going to talk. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in today. I want to thank Mr. Leon Phillips for being my special guest. God bless you. Listen, tune in tonight at 6:00 p.m. at our Bible study right here at GETHSEMANE Missionary Baptist Church. We're located at 2127 37th Street, 6:00 p.m. Also on Sunday mornings at 11:00 a.m. This is our way of giving back to the community and getting involved and staying involved. We invite you to do that, and thank you. God bless you for tuning in.
I was trying to hit the live button.